Hey everyone, welcome back to another war-torn future video, and this time we are looking at the Imperial Navy and doing a run through Battlefleet Gothic Armada from the ground up right now. The game officially launches tomorrow, so this is what I'm assuming is the final build unless there's an update, which is pretty cool. Everything's come along pretty well, but let's take a look at our ships here. Looking at our first light cruiser in our ships of the line, and this is a Dauntless Mark 1. Now, the main draw to the Dauntless Mark 1, is this guy right here, the Heavy Prow Lance. Now, as you can see, it is armor piercing. That means the enemy ship's armor is always counted as 25%, and the weapon always hits its target. Now, I have some mixed feelings about Imperial Lance weapons. For one, usually, unless this has been changed recently in a patch, lance weaponry on Imperial ships takes a lot of upgrades in order to be effective, in my opinion. They're accurate, they're always going to hit, but when you're using this weapon to its max potential, you are in the forward firing arc. So basically you're firing this way. And the problem I have with that is this ship's main armament are these guys right here. The light macro batteries that go down both the port and starboard broadsides. Okay, and the main reason that I especially on an unupgraded Dauntless Mark 1 is this is not going to do a whole lot of damage, especially against a shielded target. These things right here will absolutely batter through a shield pretty quickly, and these guys up top, the light double macro turrets, can lay down a little bit of fire. Not that great either, but in conjunction with these, that's where all your DPS is coming. That's where all your main source of hull damage is coming. So I don't know if I can get behind these lances. I know you can put a lot of power behind them, but early on I don't think that it's worth doing that, just because, like I said, I think with it being a light cruiser, its speed and its quite frankly, it's pretty good defense for a light cruiser are going to be best to brawl it out with these broadsides. Now, I have given it the skill for the auger probe, which is a skill kind of like a MMO cooldown ability, which allows me to shoot an auger probe across the map in order to kind of find out what fleet composition I'm dealing with, what the enemy has brought to the table. Okay, so that's our Mark 1. Now we're moving on to both our Mark 2s, and the main difference between the Mark 1 and Mark 2 is the prow weapon. So the prow weapon on these Imperial ships really doesn't change all that much until you get to the Nova cannons. For the most part, you're looking at the torpedoes on the Mark II. That's a significant change from the Mark 1. And torpedoes are going to be great against Eldar fleets. Not really so great, in my opinion, against most other fleets. They do a little bit more damage against Chaos because they're less armored than Orcs and other Imperial navies. But against those Eldar, these are going to be extremely useful in close quarters because you get a good bracketing on an enemy ship with these, and they're taking a considerable amount of damage because they are very, very fragile in the Eldar list. Now, against other navies, not as good. People still try to avoid them. Imperial ships will generally not really be that disturbed by them. As you can see, tiny target, that means they're difficult to target because these weapons can also be attacked by the defensive turrets of other ships. And they are armor piercing. The enemy ship armor is always counted as 25%. But again, I don't count that as too useful, especially in a mirror match or up against Orcs. It just doesn't do that much damage. The most important thing that they can do is area denial. You spam fire a couple of these before the match, and yeah, for whatever reason, a lot of people try to break their fleet up, totally messes with their coherency or their strategy they were going for. to begin with, and that's useful for you. Like I said, I think this is mostly going to be great against the Eldar, not necessarily so great against the other fleets. But again, they are brawlers. And for the skill on this one, I've picked Taunt. Taunt is useful because it draws the enemy away from wherever it is they're moving, draws it towards the ship, and that way you can engage with your macro batteries or your torpedoes, or just get them caught in crossfire between 2 broadsides or 3 broadsides. So it's always good to have a ship with Taunt. Now, the Dauntless Mark II is again the same thing as the one we spoke of. This one, however, has the Stasis Bomb, which is a control skill, and it's very useful for area denial, and it's very useful for isolating an enemy ship. You'll always have a hard time targeting certain fleets with these type of weapons, the different transported bombs, because fast fleets like the Eldar are almost always going to be able to maneuver away from the area of effect. Okay, the same thing with Chaos. They see that thing, they're most of the time they're going to be able to maneuver. With Orcs and with the Imperial Navy, it's another story. They're going to have a harder time. If you time it right, they're going to be in more trouble. Okay, and the Stasis Bomb, basically what it does is when you use it, it locks the enemy within an area of effect, and it basically slows them down to a crawl. And the only weapons you can fire out of the Stasis Bomb field and into the Stasis Bomb field without effect are lance weapons. Macro batteries, torpedoes, all that jazz gets slowed down, but again, still useful for targeting down the enemy. Another key point I want to hit on about Imperial vessels is this front prow armor. So this is actually, as you can see down here, the front armor is 75 compared with the side 50 armor and the back 50 armor. So it's got a considerable amount of beefiness in those front armors, and this is good for you as an Imperial player because most of the time what are your ships doing? They're going to close with the enemy, so they're heading, with that nose going towards the enemy. So that's going to be the first thing that receives fire. Or if you're, if one of your ships is already kind of on its last legs, its sides are all jacked up and it's been shelled repeatedly, it might be a good idea to point that nose at the enemy and let them wail on that for a little bit because, again, your armor is much more significant there. Remember, though, that gets negated by lance weaponry. Basically, the armor doesn't count for anything, so keep that in mind. And one last thing is that also makes these ships incredibly good for ramming, which against Chaos, against Orc, and against Imperial navies, it's a tactic that you would use on a game basis if it's going to get you a benefit. Sure, ram the enemy. If you happen to have an attack of opportunity, sure, ram the enemy. But don't focus on that. Don't think that that's your main way to attack. The only fleet which I would say that you're A-okay with doing that with consistently across the game are the Eldar, because they are made out of paper as far as I'm concerned. You could look at them the wrong way and their ships could explode. Of course, they're compensated for that because their weapons are some of the best weapons in the game, in my opinion, and they're extremely, extremely fast. But let's move on to the Imperial escort ship. So here we're looking at the Cobra Destroyer. Brings torpedoes to the table and a light micro battery, but it's the cheapest Imperial one at 37 points, and honestly, I don't take these very much in games. I've experimented with them before using kind of mass Cobra destroyers in order to take advantage of their torpedoes, but these torpedoes don't have that great of an effect against, like I said, those Chaos, Imperial Navy, or Orc fleets. They're only going to have a great effect against the Eldar, and for the most part, unless you take torpedoes en masse, you're not going to hit them at far ranges because they're so damn fast. They're going to be able to avoid it. However, these guys would be good en masse to ram Eldar fleets, to basically use these guys as sacrificial goats and just slam them right into the Eldar and just drain their health away. So let's move on to the Firestorm. Now this is the most versatile of the Imperial Navy escorts. As you can see, it's got the light prow lance, which is basically a smaller version of the Dauntless Mark I's prow lance, and the light double macro turret. Now these guys, you want to kind of want to wait and engage with your larger ships before you bring these guys in, because as escorts they're much more fragile, and if you're relying on this lance to do a lot of accurate damage, you want to make sure he's protected. He's not going to get wasted too early on. These aren't really what I would say recon escorts. For that, you're better off with a Cobra destroyer because it's much faster. And the Sword Frigate. Now, Sword Frigate I liked it for a considerable amount of time because of these double light macro turrets. They can lay down a crap ton of fire, and if you use 2 of them in conjunction with another ship of the line, you're gonna be pretty set for laying down DPS. So not to be scoffed at either. This ship is maneuverable, fairly fast compared with the rest of the Imperial lineup, and it can lay down a decent amount of fire, because remember, the only other ship that has these light double macro turrets right now is a light cruiser, so he's bringing some decent stuff to the table there. But for now, let's stop talking about ship makeup and search for a game. Okay, so here we go. Cruiser Clash. This is basically a fight to the death or until the one of the enemies retreats, and it looks like we're going up against some orcs. Now, okay, so that being said, right, we're probably going to be going up against a very cruiser-heavy fleet composition. The orcs have cheaper ships. They're probably going to have more escorts than us as well. So I'm going to go ahead and bring out my lance guy. Even though I don't like him as much, he has the range to stay away from those orcs, because that's where they are the most dangerous in close range. So let's get... we're not going to need taunt because they're certainly going to close with us. And let's get that Firestorm frigate. Again, long range fire support. That's what we're going to need here. Try to keep the enemy at bay. Alright, so it looks like it's time for the deployment phase, and there's considerable amount of terrain here, and what I mean by terrain is, these features like the asteroid fields, the nebulae. Asteroid fields will do damage to most ships unless you have upgrades and you're moving through them. Nebulae will conceal them. So sometimes it's useful to try to start an engagement near these asteroid fields. You can also hide in the asteroid fields and not take damage if you don't move at all. So that's something also to keep in mind. But for right now, let's deploy our fleet. I like to deploy in a line formation usually, because usually you have enough time to close with the enemy. And it looks like we're dealing with just 2, so it looks like 2 cruisers. But let's find out for sure. Let's send our auger probe that way.
Awaiting orders.
And let's send a pack of torpedoes that way too. Bracket them with those.
At your command.
And I think I'm going to leave my escort over here and try to hope they just forget about it. Now the biggest thing to worry about with the orcs is this that's coming right here. If he knows what he's doing, all of these are just boarding torpedoes. That's it. That is it. And this is a much larger ship over here, because as you can see, its spread of torpedoes was 6 compared to the 4. So that's a light cruiser, and this is probably a cruiser. Alright, so he's going to hide. up in there. Fine by me. Because I'm gonna maneuver through his fire.
Your orders.
And I don't think our escort's in danger, so yeah, here we go. We have a cruiser and a light cruiser. Now he's going to attempt and
yes, Admiral.
Close the distance with us. Not a problem. I'm going to set my guy with my heavy lance battery to fire forward at extreme range. We just got identified, orders. Not a big deal.
Yes, Admiral. Understood.
The biggest thing to be worried about with the orcs is
setting course.
Boarding. Getting boarded by them, being lightning struck by them, which is like a teleport attack where they teleport their troops onto your ship, and then having what's essentially a critical done to your ship where you lose some kind of ability. You know, you lose your engines, you lose a turret, you lose your generators, which makes you lose your shield. So right now he's kind of got me right in here, but that's not a big deal because we should be able to pivot pretty safely through the torpedoes.
Ship
well,
ready.
Spoke too soon. So you're gonna see right here. Oh, look at that! Definitely maneuvered.
Yes,
so I'm gonna set this little guy here up.
Your orders.
And we're gonna do this and try and separate him from his light cruiser.
Engines hot.
So he's either gonna hit the big red button and do a special maneuver to get out of there.
Enemy ship sighted.
And so that is what we will do as well. So that is why you never give two.
Ship ready.
So you always got to pay attention. And there, of course, I got boarded and my generators got destroyed. So what we're going to do is brace for impact. We're going to board in turn. We're going to get bombed. Not a big deal.
Changing course.
Engines destroyed. And I got rammed.
Awaiting orders. We are the Imperial Navy. Yes, Admiral.
Let's switch this guy back to fighting with his broadsides.
Helm coordinates acknowledged. Initiate emergency repairs. At your command. Your orders.
So the best thing we could hope for is that we reduce this guy to nothing. As you can see, the light prow lance not doing a whole lot. We just lost another deck right there, basically another critical on our ship.
Awaiting orders.
So our ships are in pretty sad state right now, to be honest.
The navigator will guide us out.
So my
engaging.
My AI there is deciding that it's better to jump out of this fight, and I kind of agree with him.
Engines active.
So we're gonna try and
Yes,
try and distract this guy. Who knows? If he boards me, he could cancel this warp jump, and I might lose a ship. But there we go. That guy got out of here.
Ship ready.
So he brought a larger ship to the battle than I did. He brought a cruiser, which is a good move, especially against a low-level person who hasn't had the ability to upgrade their ships or any other cruisers. It makes it extremely difficult to combat them, so they're in a better position to fight than I am. But he still did a considerable amount of damage. If I'd had better management of my ships, it wouldn't have been a problem. I probably would have been fine. I got hit by that bomb early. I self-rammed early. So just some dumb moves on my part.
Cruising speed set.
but hey, you can't win them all.
All ahead full.
As you can see, he's got plenty of skills here between
Coordinates acknowledged. Cruising speed set.
Between the cruiser and the light
We've lost an
cruiser.
escort ship.
Stasis bombs, and then he also had the shield disruption bombs, so it was a good mix he had going there. Okay, so none of my ships, and now this one, another point to talk about is a lot of times the AI knows when it's better to pull back than you do, because if I'd stayed in the fight for much longer, one of these ships would have been crippled for sure and would be out of the match or out of the lineup basically to pick from for at least another game, which really kind of kills, you know, your fun when you have, oh, okay, both my ships done. All I have is the Dauntless Mark II and a bunch of escorts. It makes it much more difficult to win. But ultimately, sometimes it's a much better choice to retreat. And you still end up getting a little bit of renown even from losses. So not a big deal. We're going to drive on here and look at crew and upgrades for our light cruisers. So these are the things that help benefits you a lot in the long run. For me, I always go for the master gunners first because it increases our critical chance by, I believe, 25% for both your lances and macro weapons per level, so not bad. Much later on, I usually go into the servitors because that reduces the cooldown time of all your skills by 4% per level. As you can see, some of them are significantly long once you've popped that ability and the cooldown starts. I think one of them's like 180 seconds for the cooldown to end, which is pretty significant. But let's talk about upgrades. Now, upgrades are significant. Like I was speaking, we were dealing with a guy that had far better, more upgraded ships, and now we get to do that because basically our captains down here have gained experience and they're level 2 captains now. So let's just talk through these real quick. Maneuvering thrusters improves the turning speed by 5 degrees per second, which is good. Efficient plasma thrusters, this basically gives you 25% more combustion gauge for your special maneuvers. And auxiliary power relays. Now these are extremely useful because, as you could tell, if you get a critical on your engines, especially with Imperial ships, you're at a standstill. But this basically helps you have that negative effect on your engines. And then the emissions dissipator, special maneuvers will not reveal the ship anymore. I don't usually go for this. I don't think I've really ever seen anyone use this except for chaos ships. And even then, I don't know if it's really a worthwhile upgrade. Generator wise, these are going to affect your shields. This is the asteroid damage to the ship is negated, the navigational shields, which I was speaking about earlier. This can be useful. I think it might be more useful in larger ships as you're trying to put maybe an asteroid field between you and the enemy, and they'll either have to get closer or fire through it. It could be extremely useful, kind of connected that way. Additional void shield generator, great ability, gives you 100 extra points to your shields. Auxiliary shield capacitor, the reloading speed of the shield is improved by 50%. Another good one if you're trying to go on the more tanky side of things. And generator security team, so your troop value jumps up +10 against cancel warp action. So when you're trying to warp out like I did at the end, if someone boards you or does a lightning strike, they can cancel that warp jump right? And then your ship is a sitting duck, basically, and they can just pick it apart. Or you'll have to try to, you know, save yourself somehow. So this can help protect against that. Now, the improved auger array, this is useful in conjunction with micro warp jump, because the longer you have on your detection range, the further you can jump away. So that might be a skill worth picking up, because especially on a lance-armed ship, the farther your detection range is, the farther you can reach out and hit with that lance, which got a pretty good range on it. The belt armor basically lets you ignore the first critical damage. So if you get boarded and let's say they blow up your engines, it'll negate that first one. But after that, you're hosed. So could be useful. It's kind of a crapshoot. Like I said, if you're dealing with orcs, they're gonna be spamming boarding torpedoes. And more likely than not, if they get a good spread on you, this won't matter, because they'll have like 3 or 4 boarding actions, and you're probably going to get a critical. So, advanced cogitator linkage. Increases the duration of the special orders. Never been a big fan of this, never picked it up. I could see how it could be useful, but I've only ever really used brace for impact. To be honest, lock on usually doesn't and that's probably could be a detriment to me, but I find that brace for impact has the biggest benefit for me on the field. The enhanced battle bridge basically means you can continue to use special orders when your deck is destroyed in a critical. Hull reinforcement increases your hull points by 100. Extra turrets, you get 3 defense turrets, which helps protect against fighters and torpedoes. Camo, basically you get extra duration to your running silent special skill. And fire protection system, fires last 50% shorter. I gotta say, out of all of these, I've always picked the improved 100-point ship hull. I could see how this might be useful if you have, you know, really strong ship, silent running from nebula to kind of surprise the enemy, but I've hardly ever seen that, to be honest. And weaponry is honestly where most of people's skills go into. Now, I think with this guy in particular, this dude right here, we're going to use him as kind of a recon one, so we're probably going to go for this improved auger array. But let's go through the weaponry. Turbo weaponry increases the range of all weapons by 3,000 units, all macro weapons anyway. Additional teleportarium, you can basically get an extra lightning strike deal. Armor piercing, this could be useful, but you have to be at 3,000 units or less to get this of range in order for this to benefit you, so hit or miss sometimes. Disruption overcharge, this is probably one that I might get for this guy later on, just to get past those shields, which these lances usually don't do anything against. They don't do very much. Overload generator, I've had this one before, but I've never seen it succeed. I've turned on my lock on and I've fired a spread with my my heavy lance, and no critical, nothing. And you know, to me that's, and I did it several times actually with I think the Lunar class cruiser, might have been the Gothic class cruiser, that only has lances on its broadsides and nothing, no joy every time it fires, no criticals even when I've done the lock on special order. But I don't know, maybe I wasn't doing it right. Refined lens, another good one for ships like this, because it gives you that extra 3,000 units of range. And then targeting matrix is basically above the 6,000 range distance, the accuracy loss of macro weapons is reduced by 50%, so that could be a good one. I think for now we're going to go with improved auger array and get that extra detection range and use this guy kind of as recon. And then with the Guardian of Stranavar here, we're gonna go ahead and get a crew member, and let's see if we can't get ourselves another match. Let's see if we can't level some of these guys up, maybe get a W out of this, but who knows. Okay, it looks like another orc battle. Let's go with the same lineup. Let's go fight. We're probably gonna see a similar build, you know, maybe a cruiser and then a light cruiser. This time I'm gonna try and actually neutralize at least one of the enemy ships. I think I waited too long to get my escort in there last time as well. That's extra DPS that was wasted. Unfortunately for us, there's not much cover on our side of the field here, but we'll get it. So
ship ready.
It looks like what we're dealing with is 2 light cruisers and an escort.
Awaiting orders.
So we're gonna put this guy in engage.
Yes, Admiral.
And here come the torpedoes, which is, you know, good orc
orders?
player thing to do. If you're not spamming those torpedoes, you're wrong. You're not playing them right. And what I'm gonna try and go for is I'm gonna try to entangle them over here amongst these asteroids. One, it helps me kind of keep coherence here as these torpedoes cross in the air.
At your command.
And hopefully my light cruiser there can escape. I think we can maneuver my escort through and be just fine. Yeah, it looks like it's gonna miss them. So let's
Enemy ship sighted.
Alright, so I guess he really didn't want to get hit
Ship
by any
ready.
torpedoes, but hey, that's okay. I got some more for him.
Yes, Admiral.
Okay, so looks like this is an escort right here, another cruiser and the other cruiser. I don't know why he's firing behind
Your
us,
orders?
but not a very good spread on his part. So it's to my benefit to keep these guys at range because their biggest strength
Yes,
is
Admiral.
in close quarters.
At your command.
And you want to try and avoid yeah, it looks like he's gonna try and hide. That's fine. If he sits in there longer, it makes it easier to torp him. Again, not very effective for doing damage in the
Awaiting
long
orders.
run, but especially with only one. Let's see if I can coax him out. This guy's not placing his shots very well. There we go. So I think right here is our time to
Ship ready.
try to avoid at least getting hit by 2 of those. See,
Awaiting orders.
What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna throw this auger
At
in
your
there.
command.
Throw another spread.
Your orders.
Boy, these escorts on the Imperial side seem to have gotten far, far slower
Yes, Admiral.
than I would have figured.
Ship ready. Your orders.
So he's showing his rear
Enemy ship
armor to me,
sighted.
which is a mistake on his part.
Course plotted. Awaiting orders. At your command.
Okay.
Damage teams, begin repairs now.
Try to trap his guy away from us and give us some breathing room
Your orders?
while we lay in.
Yes, Admiral.
And then give this dude a special maneuver here. Okay, cool. So we trapped him. We're gonna do 2 lightning strikes.
Awaiting orders.
And we're gonna give him our front armor to ram into.
Ship ready. Yes,
And
Admiral.
I'm gonna maneuver my escort here out of the way.
Initiate emergency repairs.
Who's his captain kind of sucks.
At your command.
Use this front armor of mine. Again, I
Your orders.
just trying to optimize how much that armor is being
Awaiting
used.
orders.
And let's get away from this guy. Okay, this dude's pretty safe.
Your orders.
So as you can see, we're basically maintaining constant stream of fire on this dude, and I'm going to go ahead and just extend this out.
Yes, Admiral.
Just keep firing. You just got to keep firing,
ready.
keep pressure on the enemy, because if not, you give them a break, they'll be able to heal. They'll
command.
give you all kinds of problems. So I'm going
Damage
to
teams,
initiate
begin
healing on
repairs
mine.
now.
Get this guy
Enemy
a little
ship
closer
sighted.
to the fight.
Brace for impact.
Give him a brace for impact order there.
Your orders.
I'll try to get this dude up into the fight too.
Ship ready. Yes, Admiral. Awaiting
And he's
orders.
gonna get a ram, not a very good one. And, it looks like they've kind of negated the effectiveness of ramming
At your command.
recently, because it hasn't done a whole lot of
Your
damage
orders.
anymore to the same tonnage ships. So what we're gonna do here is we're gonna take the benefit that he's isolated this guy away from the rest of his dudes. So that's gonna hurt us. That clearly was gonna give me a very good critical there, because to his benefit he did hit a wog, which gives him an extra assault action per
Yes,
each
Admiral.
one. And
Awaiting orders.
let's get these guys out of here.
Your
They're
orders.
maneuvering like idiots.
At your command.
And so here we go. Now the negative part about orcs is they have terrible morale. So once you've battered them good and well enough, they're going
Ship
to
ready.
retreat.
Yes, Admiral.
So that's one ship there crippled. Let's get my escort out of harm's way there. And basically his light
Your
cruiser over here is not in a good shape to fight either, and his escort
At
won't
your
be in
command.
any better. So there they go. He's gonna retreat. He's gonna try and save his ship from getting completely demolished. Not a bad move on his part, but we'll still get the escort.
Awaiting orders.
I'm gonna try and ram. Okay, that's cute.
At your command.
Give him a good drive-by there. Smack him around.
Your orders.
And looks like that's a victory. So I would say the biggest mistake that orc player made was isolating his strongest cruiser. Granted, he didn't lose any of his ships totally. He didn't get them all destroyed, but he did get 2 crippled ships, which means that one of those cruisers is a no-go for another match, and that he also lost his escort. And he gave us some renown, so that's a good thing. But again, his main concern should have been laying down as much close fire as possible with those 2 cruisers and focusing them. He wasn't focused on one particular ship, trying to get boarding actions on it, and he wasn't particularly thinking well with his escort choice. Mainly because the escorts for the orcs that do the best in that type of engagement are, I believe, the savage ships, which have lots of guns in front of them instead of just the torpedoes, so that they can engage directly in combat. But okay, let's give the Guardian of Stranovar an upgrade, since we can finally afford it. And I think for this guy I'm gonna have to go with a speed type. I don't know about that, actually. Now, let's see here. Let's make him a little bit more tanky and go ahead and reinforce his shields. And let's try and do one more match, see if we get another enemy that's not an orc or an Imperial player. Oh, looks like we got another orc player. Not a big deal. This gonna be fun. Just gotta do the same thing. Try and isolate. Try and fight our way through it. So we're going to go for the same lineup this time. And let's go for another Firestorm frigate. That served us pretty well. Okay, and so it looks like it's a pretty nice and happy battlefield here. So since we have some nebulae in our deployment zone, I'm going to take advantage of that and just split up my forces a little bit and give some kind of confusion. And see how the enemy reacts to that.
Ship ready.
Looks like they're right over there, and I'm gonna give them torpedoes.
Yes, awaiting orders.
And then maneuver into a nebula again and disappear.
Underway.
Now see, he's trying to kind of negate my movement over here. Bracket the nebula. Fine. Actually, I'm probably pretty safe that way, so I'm gonna go ahead and do that.
Yes, Admiral.
And I'm gonna send an auger probe out this way. So there's a little auger probe. Basically just a mobile sensor. Oh, and it looks like, surprising. He's gone for two carrier type light cruisers. The orcs are able to customize their light cruisers and different ships really extensively. The downside to those ships, unfortunately, is that they have almost no close quarter combat output, so they rely heavily on their boarding torpedoes. But as you can see, this guy's got a lot of crap right here. This is either the tractor cannon or the equivalent of the orc equivalent of the Nova cannon. Totally possible. I haven't seen them before yet, and so
ship ready. Engines hot.
So what I'm going to try and do is, yeah, and the fact that the reload speed on his torpedoes is so high means that he's got a lot of crew points in whatever it is that they're... So I'm going to try and offset them by having to do the big red button to get out of my bombs AoE, and then come over here and...
Enemy ship sighted!
Oh, so he did a micro warp jump.
Orders.
Not a big deal.
Brace for impact.
And
cruising speed set. Ship ready. Yes, sir.
So he destroyed his front weapon by trying to ram me.
Engines to maximum. Damage teams.
My generators are destroyed on this ship right here, so no shields for me, unfortunately. It's a big deal. So we're gonna try and leverage this as much as possible. If we can really beat up on this ship right here, we can absolutely do some damage and hopefully destroy the morale. But this ship is gonna not be able to probably make it out of the fight, and so really need to use that maneuverability we have to counteract this ship's tankiness, because they are higher level ships. So let's get this guy out of there, not get him boarded. So he's really not doing that great of a job on maneuvering here. His ships, he's using a lot of bombers, which is really detrimental to us, but they're not doing a whole lot of, actually he's using assault boats. He would be doing a lot better if he was using bombers.
Awaiting orders.
But it is probably the best orc way.
Ship ready.
And we're not doing a whole lot of damage, unfortunately. Now I want to try and avoid these. I want to try and avoid those asteroids right there. Gosh, they really slowed down my Imperial Navy. They seem way, way slower.
We are the Imperial Navy.
Honestly, I think he's done more damage to himself trying to ram me than anything, so there's the benefit of that.
Ship ready.
My ship is very much getting annihilated by boarding actions, so that is our primary concern with orcs. But unfortunately, I don't have a whole lot of power here.
Acquiring new vector.
I'm not sure. He must have got a full spread on me.
Execute high energy turn.
Keep this guy out of here.
Targeting enemy vessel. Orders received. Awaiting orders. At your command.
I'm gonna try and trap him in there. Yep, and then get my lances on him if I can.
Yes, Admiral. For the Emperor.
But his cooldown times are so ridiculously slow. He probably has a really probably a really low cooldown time on his repair because of the different benefits he's taken. So it's been a real challenge during this match to just get his level down, his shields down high enough.
Initiate emergency repairs. Cruising speed.
We have done a considerable amount of damage, and if we're able to level this ship, there we go. He's gonna try and pull it out because he can't afford to lose that ship. Especially if he's kind of smurfing it up on a lower account and just dumping all his renown into one ship like that or two ships,
Your orders.
which I think is what we've seen a lot of here, is
Cruising speed
guys
set.
that are spending a considerable amount of their renown to just upgrade to cruisers, basically, and then just hang out in the lower ranks and not have to deal with, like, you know, hard stuff at the higher
Awaiting
levels where
orders.
people are well equipped. And really, I don't even know if this guy's got
Engines
any
hot.
batteries anymore. Let's have him go with engage starboard.
Yes,
Yeah,
Admiral.
there we go. Now we got him. Now we got him.
Underway.
Those shields are gonna come.
Your orders. Engines to maximum. Yes, Admiral. Engaging.
Fortunately, it's kind of difficult against carrier-based fleets in this
Cruising
regard.
speed
But
set.
let's see. Let's put
Ship ready. Cruising speed set. Helm coordinates acknowledged.
and they have really slowed down the Imperial Navy much more than I thought.
All ahead full.
Your orders? Awaiting orders.
Setting course. Orders received. Understood.
And I guess he's refusing to move.
Course plotted.
And this guy, I don't know what he's doing.
At your command. Changing course. Ship ready.
Yes, Admiral. Setting course.
So as you can see, people doing cute stuff, just dumping a bunch of renown into light cruisers and staying on the low brackets. It's not cheap by any means. It's like 400 renown points to get the other light cruiser that he retreated. And it's also much easier to manage just two ships, which is probably why they don't like the higher sections of the game as much. And additionally, orc ships are usually not this quick.
Cruising speed set.
An escort should be
Understood.
easily able to outrun this thing,
Engines to
but
maximum.
apparently not. Man, they've really seems like they really debuffed my guys here.
At your command.
I guess I got too used to
Engines
test
hot.
playing the Eldar, who are extremely maneuverable.
Course plotted. Changing course.
As you can see, he's able to heal himself really quickly, and that's because he's spent the time getting
On
the
target.
putting the points right
Orders
in
received.
in the right place on his crew
For
in
the
order
Emperor.
to
Understood.
really get that repair cooldown time really low and be able to pop his abilities early and get his carriers out early. It's a good build. I like it actually for orcs.
Course plotted.
And right now I'm just trying to frustrate him
Changing course.
by making this last as long as possible.
Imperial escort destroyed.
So I got my ships out of there early. At least one of my ships out early, and so did he. Unfortunately, I did not discern which one of my broadsides was ineffective correctly, and so I wasn't able to really hammer that last guy down, and that is something I need to pay attention to in the future. So we finally have the new cruiser slot, and I think I'm going to pick that, and that is where this video will end. So let's unlock that, and then let's add a ship. So now you have a lot more options in the cruiser section than in the light cruiser section when you're in the Imperial Navy. And so yeah, this is where it's at right here as far as I'm concerned. Dominators, especially more than one Dominator with the Nova Cannon, are a terror to deal with, an absolute terror. The Tyrants, yeah, I considered them for a while because they were very macro battery intensive. However, the plasma macro battery all it has is increased range, but you lose damage on it. You don't, and the Imperial Navy is not really something you go for range on. This Dominator with its Nova Cannon has an intense amount of range, and so spamming that is probably your best way to success. The Gothic has a crap ton of Lance batteries. Again, the same issue I've run into before with Lances. Not a big fan. They just never seem to have that oomph I need. And as you saw in the previous battle, they certainly weren't doing a whole lot to that enemy. I might have been better off with my other Mark II slugging it out with those guys, but I keep trying to give it a chance, and it's like it always fails me horribly. The Lunar is an interesting combination because it has a Lance battery and then a macro battery, and I could see this one probably being one of your better bets other than the Dominator if you wanted to kind of be able to fight a little bit up close and then put those Lance batteries at long range. But again, I don't think you can beat this ship right here, especially not with this thing. But so that is where I leave you, and we will pick up next on another match with our cruiser here, the Dominator, and playing up through the different ladders all the way up to 5-star Admiral. So once again, that's War Torn Future. Thanks for checking out the video, and have a good night.